is one of my favorite speakers. And this is one of my favorite speakers. This is the Opera Prima 2015 Opera Loudspeakers most affordable bookshelf speaker. Today we're going to compare all three and find out if the Opera Prima 2015 makes it into my top 3 bookshelf speakers. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the Opera 2015 versus the Sonus Faber Luma Amateur 2s versus the Emotiva XB2s. The Sonus Faber Lumina 2 Amateur have a 29mm tweeter, which comes to 1.14 inches. It has a 150mm paper cone woofer that is 5.91 inches, about 6 inches. There's a joke in there. I'm not going to touch it though. Crossover frequency on the Sonus Fabers is at 2600 hertz. Claimed frequency response 55 up to 24,000 hertz. Sensitivity 86 dB, has a 4 ohm nominal impedance. Not a super easy to drive speaker, but not impossible to drive. And I've found that most of my amplifiers, really all my amplifiers except for tube amps, have driven the Sonus Faber Lumina 2 Amateurs just fine. And it comes in at 12.8 pounds. Retail price, $1,499. When I was in Italy at Opera, at Unison Research, we ate like kings. And I was super proud of myself because I had lost a bit of weight. So I went to Italy weighing 212. Before I went, I basically wasn't eating till 5 or 6, sometimes 7 o'clock at night. Anyway, the trip threw me off and I've gained about 10 pounds. Problem with eating only one meal is I don't always get the vitamins I need. That's why I'm super stoked to have AG1 sponsoring today's video. AG1 is a very simple way to get the vitamins that you may not be getting through your diet with one daily drink. 75 vitamins and minerals with whole food sourced ingredients. I have noticed that I don't have to drink as much coffee, even though I love coffee. You know I love coffee. I've gone from 6 cups down to 4 cups, and I don't always finish all 4 of those cups. I just feel better after I drink AG1. You can get these travel packets, which is what I love. Fairly straightforward though. You get a bag of AG1, you put it in here, and then you put 1 scoop into a little shaker, you drink it down. Tastes pretty good. A little minty when I drink it. You're getting comprehensive nutrition that supports brain health, which I need, gut health, which I need too, and body health, which I also need. Listen, I'm pushing 50 years old. I need some vitamins. Most importantly, peace of mind that I'm not missing out on any vitamins. I like to keep things simple when it comes to my health and my diet, because if I don't, I'm not going to do it. And AG1 is about as simple as you can get. Drink 1 a day. It also supports beauty, hair, like giving your dog some egg yolks. My coat shiny? One of the reasons why I trust AG1 is because AG1 is constantly putting their formula to the test. AG1 is backed by multiple research studies. They're validating how the ingredients work together in one formula, not just individually like most supplements do. So go to drinkag1.com/cheapaudioman. If you sign up, get some free vitamin D drops and 5 travel packets, which I love. So make foundational nutrition super simple. Give AG1 a try. Thank you, AG1, for sponsoring today's video. The Emotiva XB2s. They have a 25mm folded ribbon tweeter, an AMT tweeter, and a 6-inch woven cone woofer. Has an efficiency of 86 dB, nominal impedance of 4 ohms. Is rated from 48 hertz all the way up to 27,000 hertz, crossed over at 2600 hertz, 12.8 inches high, 8.5 inches wide, and 11.5 inches deep. And it weighs 18 pounds. Comes in at $499 before any type of discounts. You can get a military discount. You can also get bundled discounts if you spend more than $1,000 or $2,000, stuff like that. The Opera Prima 2015 bookshelf speakers. Sensitivity 91 dB. So far and away the most sensitive speaker on today's list. Comes with a 7-inch woofer, which is specifically made for Opera loudspeakers by ScanSpeak, which is a driver company. The tweeter is a 1-inch soft dome tweeter, also made by ScanSpeak. Frequency rating 40 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz. Crossed over at 2,000 hertz. 4 ohm nominal impedance. Each speaker comes in at a beefy 21 pounds. 14 inches high, about 9 inches wide at the baffle, because these are kind of like a triangle, and about 11 inches deep. Operas are not only the biggest, but the heaviest speaker out of the bunch. The Prima 2015 bookshelf speakers from Opera are handmade in Italy. I did an entire video talking about Opera loudspeakers and Unison research. I will link that video at the end of this video, but stay here, watch this video. But after this video, you gotta make sure you go watch kind of the behind the scenes with Unison research and Opera loudspeakers. Great family-run company. Very high-end speaker company though, so these are not inexpensive. They come in at $2,500. And before you shoot the messenger, I have done reviews, I have done videos on speakers that cost more than $2,000, like the Bucard S400 Mark II, like the Klipsch Heresy, like the Klipsch Cornwalls, amongst others. The interesting comparison here is we have 3 different bookshelf speakers at 3 different price points: 500, 1500, 2500. From an aesthetics standpoint, well, the Operas win. They're all kind of similar though, because they have a bit of a fake leather wrap. On the Sonos, you have it all the way on the top and the sides, then you have the wood front baffle. The Operas are a bit opposite of that. They have the wood sides and then the leather on top and in front. This is fake leather too. I wish it was real, but it's fake leather. Emotiva has that wrapped on the top, the sides, and the bottom, and then has a black front baffle. Binding posts, pretty much what you would expect to see on a $500 speaker versus a $1,500 speaker versus a $2,500 speaker. The Operas cannot be bi-amped or bi-wired. The Sonos Faber and the Emotiva both can be bi-amped or bi-wired, if you so choose. Front port on the Operas, bottom port on the Sonos Faber, back port, rear ported on the Emotiva XB2s. The Operas are also different. They are mirror images of each other, so the tweeters are offset. The equipment that I had hooked up to all of these speakers in 2 different rooms was the Advanced Paris A10 Classic integrated amplifier in the living room with the Cambridge Audio CXN100 serving streamer duty. I also had these hooked up to the Cambridge Audio Evo 150 integrated amplifier with its internal streamer serving source duties. With the Advanced Paris, most of the listening was done through the Cambridge Audio CXN100 digitally out to the Jashelli Labs Daisy DAC. In the office, they were connected to the Unison Research Unico Primo integrated amplifier with a Weem Pro streamer digitally being sent to the Daisy, also from Jashelli Labs. It's the same DAC. I just brought it from the living room into the office. I also used the Weem Pro digitally out into the Cambridge Audio CXA81 integrated amplifier. What a mouthful. This is probably one of the most complicated videos I've ever made, or at least one that I've spent a ton of time on. And I've been shooting this really over the last week. But I was using multiple sources, multiple amplifiers with multiple speakers in multiple rooms, trying to get kind of a vibe or an understanding about how the Opera Prima 2015s compared to two speakers that I love, really love. And we have 3 different price points, pretty big deltas in price too. And in the final thoughts, I will talk about what I believe the Operas sound like on their own, in a vacuum. Try to describe them in a way that I think most people would understand. But what is a description unless it is compared to something else? And generally speaking, doing this for 3.5 years, I know that people want products at different price points compared. So that's exactly what I did. The heavy duty comparisons was done right here in this room, and it's not perfect, it's a small room, but what I tried to do is listen in the near field. So the first comparison was the Operas versus the Sonus Faber. So we have $1,500 versus $2,500. At the 27-second point of Fleetwood Max, the chain, the Operas had more reverb or airiness to the cowbell. That part. Now the Sonus Fabers, I would say, had more fullness to the bass drum, but it was less cleanly defined. So the Operas were a little punchier, but yet cleaner. Where I wouldn't say, listen, the Sonus Fabers are not muddy. They are not muddy. They're a great speaker. The Operas are just better on the bottom end. More impact, and it's a quicker impact, so it doesn't seem as veiled. Remember, I'm talking about a very good speaker compared to another very good speaker. The Operas are just better on the bottom end and airier on the top end. Give Me One Reason by Tracy Chapman. The Sonus Fabers, again, this is going to be a theme. Lower mid-range was fuller, but less detailed than the Operas. Which one you like better would be up to what your listening preferences are. Her voice, though, the vocals are just much weightier on the Sonus Faber. Wherever I May Roam, 27. You know what's funny is it just occurred to me that I used 27 seconds into Wherever I May Roam by Metallica, and I also used 27 seconds into Fleetwood Mac's The Chain. I wonder if that's like some type of equation that at the 27-second mark you have to have something happen, or that's like the end of the intro, because that is the end of the intro on both of those songs at 27 seconds. Because on Wherever I May Roam, the snare drum comes in. It was way more forward on the Operas. Way more snappy, more intense, but also more in focus on the Operas versus the Sonus Fabers. I also wrote down there is offbeat hi-hat hits. So the hi-hat's not clamped together. It's a little bit askew, a little bit ajar. So offbeat stuff. The cymbals on the Operas, you could start to hear the nuances into it. Sonus Faber was great, was clean, was clear, but they all sounded the same. If you really leaned in when you're listening to the Operas, you could see that there is differentiation. So each individual hit, because you don't hit a cymbal at the same strength every time. It's not the exact same hit. You could start to peel that onion back and hear a little bit of differences. It was actually really good. And the majority of my listening was done on the Unico Prima amp, which is really good amplifier. Spoilers, it's a really good amplifier. It's $2,000. All of what I'm hearing applies to the different amplifiers. It's just each amplifier has a bit of a different flavor. And I'll get into that in the final thoughts too. So what? Miles Davis, the bass line, when it came in, it comes in around 100 to 117 hertz. It was fuller on the Sonus Faber than the Operas, but the trumpets were less forward and less cleanly defined. I say less clean in my notes. There was so much detail on the trumpets that at some point I thought there was some reverb going on. I thought something was resonating over here. I thought it was maybe one of these racks or something, but it wasn't. It was just so clean I could hear into the trumpet. I don't know if it was the recording or the instrument itself, but there was something that just seemed a little bit off, but it wasn't the speakers. It's just that they were that clean and that transparent that I could hear what was going on. And that was at the 1 minute 11 second mark into So What. Broad strokes, the Operas feel more balanced without a bump in the 100 hertz-ish range like the Sonus Faber. Lot cleaner mid-range, more air on the top end. Treble is more resolving. Neither one of these speakers is fatiguing in any way. A lot of times if you have transparency or a lot of energy in the upper mid-range or the top end, that speaker is fatiguing. Neither one of these speakers are fatiguing, which is great. And that's one of the reasons why I really like the Sonus Faber. You still get detail, you get punch, but you don't have fatigue, so you can listen at louder volumes if you want to. In my opinion, the Operas are a better speaker, top to bottom, bass to treble, than the Sonus Faber. Sonus Faber is still excellent, very good, so good in fact that I purchased them. Operas are better. And I think anybody that listened to them would come to the same conclusion. I think the Operas are probably more flat or have a more balanced signature compared to the Sonus Faber, but it's not like listening to an ultra warm speaker versus an ultra exciting speaker on the top end. 27 seconds into the chain, I would say that the XB2s from Emotiva really were not embarrassed at all, comparing themselves to the much more expensive $2,500 Operas. Though about the same, if not a little bit more detail, a little bit more air on the Emotiva. They both kind of have the same pop on the bottom end. The Operas are more controlled though and hit harder, and you can look at the surrounds. That's a beefy surround on the Opera, so you know that thing's gonna hit. Also, with the increased sensitivity, the overall continuity of the sound is just better on the Operas. There's nothing wrong with the Emotivas. Frankly, I think the Emotivas sound better than speakers that are a lot more expensive, or at least I prefer them. Also, this is a difficult way to describe it, but I think it's because the tweeters crossed over much lower. So the tweeters crossed over at 2,000 on the Operas versus 2,600 on the Emotivas. So there's definitely a handoff between the tweeter and the woofer. Tracy Chapman's voice is pretty deep though, so a lot of what's going on in her voice is below the crossover point, the majority of her voice. It seemed like I was listening to Tracy Chapman live. It didn't seem like it was coming through speakers because there was such continuity. Just a seamless rendition of her voice on the Operas. Wherever I may roam, kind of similar between the Emotivas and the Sonus Faber, the top end was resolved more delicately. That's the easiest way I can put it. You're just getting more nuanced details from the Operas than you are from the Emotivas. In a vacuum though, they sound similar. However Opera designed the enclosure, however they designed the crossover, whatever is going on, I feel like I'm hearing more in the Operas. Bassline and So What, again, more cleanly resolved on the Operas versus the Emotivas. Emotivas are great though. I think at a quarter of the price, less than a quarter of the fifth of the price, there we go, I can do math now. Emotivas were not embarrassed at all. Operas are better though. What are my final thoughts? So the elephant in the room, the thing that most people are going to be talking about is the price. At $2,500, this is not an inexpensive speaker. But I will say in my experience listening to other speakers around the same price point or even more, especially comparing it to the Buchard S400 Mark II, I would take the Operas every day of the week and twice on Sunday. There's nothing wrong with the Buchard, but the Buchard has a warmer tonality. I am a detail guy. I like clarity. I like hearing things into the music. I like hearing things that I haven't heard before. And I feel like I get that in spades with the Operas without being something like a B&W or Focal or something that I feel is Ford for the sake of being Ford and almost faking you into thinking that you're hearing more detail. The Operas are just balanced front to back. They also played well with every amplifier I put on them, and they were very transparent to whatever the amplifier was. When I had them on the Evo 150 from Cambridge Audio, it had a bit of a cleaner, more analytical sound versus the A10 Classic with the Advanced Paris Evo 160 amplifier running. They do like a lot of power, which is kind of ironic considering that they're 91 dB. When I had more powerful amplifiers on it, you really felt that impact with the bass. To me, it kind of preferred that Class AB or Class A biased amplifier vibe. It warmed up the lower mid-range a little bit. That's the kind of combination that I preferred. It still sounded great on the Evo 150, but it was kind of just the fax ma'am when it was on the Evo 150. So I think you're getting better sound quality than you are on the boot cards, or at least a signature that I prefer. Then you have to take into consideration the way it's built, hand-built really, in Italy. If you're comparing it to the Sonus Faber Lumina 2 Amateurs, there's a lot more wood. It's a lot bigger speaker. Both of them are very pretty. Both of them are very stunning. But once you look at the Operas up close, you really start to see where some of this money is spent. You have a bit of a bespoke woofer in the Operas because even though it's made by ScanSpeak, there we go, even though it's made by ScanSpeak, it's done to their specifications. I also had the opportunity, which was incredible, to talk to the loudspeaker designer in Italy, and this guy knows a ton. So everything that they do with the enclosure construction, the size of the enclosure, the crossover components, and I don't remember the level of crossover components, but I know the tower, the floor standing speaker, have all the fancy caps, all the stuff that people that are into crossovers will get really excited about. So I'm sure there's very good crossover components in this thing. Regardless, though, I think this is a speaker that's not going to offend anybody at all. It's a very neutral speaker, but it also has personality. It reminds me a bit of the Q Acoustics 5020 with more air and extension, a ton more bass punch, and cleaner mid-range. And then, you know, it's got that Italian vibe to it from a design standpoint. If your budget allows, I think this is a speaker that can play very loudly. It can play very big in even a big room. There's something in the mid-range right going into kind of the treble region where there's it's a bit forward, but it's never too much to be fatiguing or distracting. But the snare drum hits were really palpable, exciting, and to me, this speaker just had a lot more dynamics than the Sonus Faber. There's not a ton of retailers that handle Operas either, so I will link somebody in the description that has stock of these. I think if you're looking for an excellent speaker that's hand-built and is absolutely beautiful, you may not like the design, I get that, it might not be for everybody, but the level of finishing on this product is next level. I prefer this over any B&W speakers I've heard, any Focals that I've heard, over the Bucards that I've heard. I think I would even purchase this. I think they actually come in less expensive than the Arundel monitors that I listen to, which were very good. They were very neutral, but they didn't have the personality that the Operas have. So at $2,500, I actually think this is a value. I haven't really heard another speaker that's similar to the Operas, with the exception of maybe the Q5020s, but they don't hit nearly as hard. I would say the closest thing to the Operas, which this is kind of ironic, the closest sound I've gotten to the Operas would be the Q Acoustics 5040, which is coming in at $1,500 a pair. But there is mid-range clarity that's going to be lost on the Qs, and there's some top-end air that's going to be lost on the Qs, even though one's a floor stander and one's a bookshelf. Excellent job. Remarkable speaker. If you like this video, make sure to watch the kind of behind the scenes at Unison Research and Opera Loudspeakers. You get to see the care that is put into the manufacture of these speakers. Thanks to all of my patrons. If you want to be part of the best hi-fi community in the world, then sign up for my Patreon. We have a Discord server, we have a Facebook group, and we also do Zooms every other Sunday where we get together and chit-chat. You also get your name in the credits of some of my videos. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen, maybe through your brand new pair of Opera loudspeakers, and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man. Oh yeah, I forgot to answer the question. Did the opera make it into my top 3 favorite speakers? Yes.